Hey guys, tonight we begin a journey into the most private, most hidden moments of Victorian women's lives. Imagine carrying 11 pounds of secrets on your body every single day. 11 lb of whale bones, steel hoops, and lace. And every single night in the flickering candlelight, you had to peel it all away layer by layer by layer. But here's what no one tells you. For many women, this wasn't just undressing, it was a ritual, sometimes sacred, sometimes painful. And for some, it was the only moment of the entire day when they could finally breathe. So before we step into those candlelit bedchambers together, I have a small request. If tonight's story captivates you, if it makes you see history in a way you never have before, would you take just a moment to subscribe and leave a like? And I'm genuinely curious. Where are you right now as you're listening to this, tucked into bed in New York, relaxing after work in California? Wherever you are, drop a comment below and let me know what time it is where you're watching. I love knowing that we're sharing this quiet moment together, even across time zones. Now dim those lights, get comfortable, and let's travel back to a London bedroom in 1875. It's 9:30 in the evening. Gas lamps flicker in the streets below. But up here in the third-floor bedchamber of a middle-class home, there's only candlelight. The woman standing before the mirror is 28 years old. Let's call her Alina. She's been awake since 6 this morning. She's managed the household staff, received guests for tea, taken a walk in the park with her husband, changed her dress 3 times, and smiled until her face ached. And now, finally, she's alone. Well, almost alone. There's a soft knock at the door. "Come in, Mary," Alina says, and her lady's maid enters. Now, this is where our story gets interesting. Because if you're imagining that Alina simply slips out of her dress and into her nightgown, you're about to discover just how wrong that assumption is. Let me take you through this piece by piece because the reality is both fascinating and slightly absurd. Alina is currently wearing approximately 11 lb of undergarments beneath her dress. That's the weight of a small bowling ball distributed across her entire body. And every single piece has to come off in a specific order or the whole thing becomes a tangled nightmare. Mary begins with the dress itself, 18 buttons down the back. This alone takes several minutes because these aren't the snap buttons we have today. These are tiny fabric-covered buttons that slip through hand-sewn loops. 1, 2, 3. Alina stands perfectly still, staring at her reflection. She's been in these clothes for 12 hours. 12 hours of sitting up straight, of breathing shallowly, of moving carefully so nothing tears or comes undone. Button 15, 16, 17. The dress finally loosens. Mary helps Alina step out of it. And here's where you might expect relief, but we're not even close to done. Beneath the dress, there's an overdress. Beneath that, there are the petticoats. In the 1850s and 60s, women wore up to 6 petticoats at once. 6, can you imagine? By the 1870s, the cage crinoline made things slightly easier, but Alina is still wearing 3 petticoats over her crinoline frame. The fashion has shifted to the bustle now, that dramatic shelf of fabric at the back, and it requires its own complicated architecture of padding and wire. Mary unlaces the petticoats one by one. The outer petticoat made of stiff horsehair, the middle petticoat slightly softer, the inner petticoat cotton trimmed with lace. Each one drops to the floor with a soft whoosh. And Alina can feel it now, that gradual lightening, but she still can't take a full breath, not yet, because we haven't reached the corset. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. The Victorian corset has this reputation, right? We think of it as this torture device, this symbol of oppression. And yes, absolutely, some women tight-lace to dangerous extremes. But for most women, the corset was just part of life, like wearing a bra today, except it did a lot more. It supported the back, it created the fashionable silhouette, it held everything in place. And for women with larger busts, it was actually necessary for comfort. But here's the thing no one talks about: taking it off was complicated. Early Victorian corsets laced up the back with a single long lace threaded through hand-stitched holes. You couldn't do it yourself, you needed help. This is why ladies' maids were so essential for wealthy women. Mary's fingers work quickly now, loosening the laces from the top. She's done this hundreds of times. She knows exactly how much to loosen before a leaner can reach around and unclasp the front busk. The busk, let me explain this ingenious little invention. Before the 1850s, women had to completely unlace and relace their corsets every single day. Imagine that, but then someone invented the slot-and stud front-opening busk. Studs on one side, matching slots on the other. Now a leaner can keep the back lacing mostly in place. Loosen it just enough and then unclasp the front. Click, 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 4 metal studs release. And this is the moment. Mary pulls the corset away and a leaner takes her first real breath in 12 hours. Her rib cage expands, her diaphragm drops, and if you've ever worn a really tight pair of jeans all day and finally taken them off at night, multiply that feeling by about 100. That's what this is like, but we're still not done. Beneath the corset, there's a corset cover, a light cotton garment designed to protect the corset from sweat and to protect the skin from the corset's rough interior. Beneath that there is the chemise, a loose underdress of cotton or linen, and beneath that we finally reach skin. Oh, and let's not forget the stockings held up with ribbon garters and the drawers, those peculiar split-leg undergarments that are essentially 2 separate legs joined only at the waistband. The entire process from the first button to the last layer takes about 20 minutes. 20 minutes of standing still while someone else dismantles you piece by piece. And here's what I find so poignant about this. For many women, this was the only time all day when someone touched them with gentleness, with care. Mary's hands are practiced and kind. She doesn't pull or yank, she's careful with the pins in a leaner's hair, careful with the delicate fabric, but not every woman had a Mary. Let me tell you about the other side of this ritual because it's important. If you were working class, you didn't have a lady's maid. You undressed yourself and it was significantly harder. Some women developed techniques. They'd pre-loosen their corset laces in the morning just enough so they could manage alone at night. Some had their husbands help them. And some honestly just slept in some of their undergarments because the process of removing everything and putting it all back on in the morning was too exhausting. There's a letter preserved in a museum in London from a factory worker named Sarah written to her sister in 1882. She writes, "I am so tired when I return home that I cannot bear the thought of unlacing. I sleep in my corset 3 nights of the week and only do the full undressing on Sundays. Can you imagine sleeping in a corset because you're too exhausted to take it off?" And then there were the women who took it to the opposite extreme. I mentioned tight lacing earlier, and this is where things get genuinely concerning. Some fashion-conscious Victorian and Edwardian women didn't just wear corsets during the day, they wore them to bed too. Special sleep corsets made of softer ribbon or cotton tape instead of heavy cowdle and steel bones. Why? To train their waist smaller. There was a French actress named Pilar. Yes, that was her stage name, who became famous in the early 1900s for having a 14-inch waist, 14 inches for context. The average woman's waist today is about 34 inches. Even the smallest Victorian corsets in museum collections average around 20 to 24 inches, but Pilar 14. She achieved this through constant corsetting, including sleeping in special training corsets every single night. The medical journals of the time were filled with warnings about this practice. Physicians wrote about displaced organs, damaged ribs, difficulty breathing. But fashion is a powerful force, and for some women, the social pressure to have that perfect hourglass figure outweighed the health concerns. Now let's return to Alina's bedroom because her undressing ritual isn't quite finished. She's down to her chemises and drawers now, the lightest layers. Mary has laid out her nightgown on the bed, a long white cotton gown with long sleeves and a high collar, because even in sleep, modesty was paramount. Even in the privacy of your own bedroom, even if you slept alone, you wore a proper nightgown. Sleeping naked was absolutely scandalous, associated with poverty or moral looseness. Alina slips the nightgown over her head. It falls to her ankles, voluminous and soft. And here's a detail that I love. The nightgown has been warming by the fire. Mary placed it there 20 minutes ago, so now it's deliciously cozy. Small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. Alina sits at her dressing table and Mary begins the second major ritual of the night, the hair. But that's a story for tomorrow's episode. For now, let's focus on this moment. Eleanor, finally free of her daytime armor, finally able to move without restriction. She stretches her arms above her head, something she couldn't do in her corset. She bends forward at the waist again, impossible earlier. Her body is remembering what it feels like to belong to her, and here's what strikes me most about this ritual. It's a threshold not just between dressed and undressed, but between public and private self. During the day, Eleanor was a performance. Every gesture controlled, every breath measured, every word chosen carefully. But here, in this candlelit room with the door locked and the world shut out, she could let that performance drop away. The undressing wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Some women found this liberating, others found it terrifying. Because when you've spent your entire life shaping yourself, literally shaping your body with whale bones and steel to fit society's expectations, who are you when you take all that off? It's a question that resonates even today, isn't it? We might not wear corsets anymore, but we all have our armor, the clothes we choose, the personas we construct, the way we present ourselves to the world. And every night we have our own undressing ritual, our own moment of letting that drop away. But the Victorians took this to an extreme we can barely imagine. 11 lb every day. And for many women, the corset wasn't just clothing, it was identity. There are accounts of women who corseted for so long that when they finally stopped, they couldn't stand up straight without support. Their back muscles had atrophied. The corset had become a part of their skeleton. Let me share one more story before we close this chapter. There's a diary entry from a woman named Catherine written in 1893, the year she got married. She writes, "My wedding night was not what I expected. It took my new husband and me nearly half an hour to remove all my garments. And by the time we finished, we were both so exhausted we simply went to sleep. Mother never told me it would be so complicated. That makes me smile because it's so human, right? All the romance and anticipation of a wedding night completely derailed by the practical reality of Victorian undergarments. Can you imagine 11 lb of fabric and bone standing between newlyweds and intimacy? No wonder the Victorians seemed so repressed. By the time you got through all those layers, you'd forgotten what you were trying to do in the first place. And yet, there's something tender about it, too. That vulnerability of needing help, of allowing someone to see you in all your layers and then slowly, carefully helping you shed them. Whether it was a lady's maid like Mary or a sister or eventually a husband, that act of undressing together created a kind of intimacy that we've largely lost today. We can undress ourselves in 30 seconds flat. Efficiency, yes, but maybe we've lost something too. As we leave Eleanor's bedchamber tonight, she's finally ready for the next phase of her nighttime ritual. The corset is off, the dress is put away, the nightgown is on. But her night has only just begun, because next comes the hair, and oh, do I have stories to tell you about that. The 100 strokes, the special brushes, the oils and tonics, the braiding techniques that protected long hair through the night. And yes, I'll explain why they needed to protect it. The answer might surprise you, but that's for next time. For now, let this image stay with you. A woman in candlelight, finally free to breathe, standing at the threshold between her public and private self. 11 lb lighter, 11 lb freer, at least until morning when the whole ritual begins again. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you in the next chapter of our journey through Victorian nights. Eleanor is still sitting at her dressing table, finally comfortable in her nightgown when Mary approaches with a brush. Not just any brush, mind you, this is a boar bristle brush. The handle made of polished wood, the bristles natural and slightly stiff, and what happens next is going to take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how long Eleanor's hair is. Because we're about to witness one of the most sacred rituals of Victorian womanhood, the nightly hair brushing, 100 strokes every single night. Does that sound excessive to you? Well, buckle up because I'm about to tell you why this wasn't just vanity, it was actually brilliant. But first, let me set the scene properly. Eleanor's hair reaches almost to her waist when it's down. During the day, it's been pinned up in an elaborate style that required probably 30 hairpins and took her chambermaid 45 minutes to create this morning. Now Mary carefully removes each pin one by one, placing them in a small dish on the dressing table. The hair tumbles down in waves, and you can actually see the indentations where the pins were. Eleanor's scalp probably aches a little. Imagine having your hair pulled tight for 14 hours straight. Mary picks up a wide-toothed comb first. This is important. You never ever start with the brush. That would be a disaster. She starts at the very ends of Eleanor's hair, working out the tangles gently, not pulling, not yanking, working gently, patiently, always below the knot, never above it. Because pulling from above breaks the hair. This is wisdom that has been passed down from mother to daughter for generations. Now, here's where it gets interesting. While Mary is carefully working through the tangles, let me tell you what Victorian women believed about their hair and what modern science has discovered they were actually right about. In the 19th century, women didn't wash their hair the way we do today. Can you guess how often? Once a week if you were fastidious. Once every 2 weeks was more common. Some women went a month between washings. I can see you making a face right now thinking that sounds disgusting. But here's the thing, they didn't use the harsh chemical shampoos we use today. When they did wash, it was with egg shampoo or rainwater or mild soap as an absolute last resort because soap was incredibly drying. So how on earth did their hair not become a greasy, filthy mess? The answer is sitting right there in Mary's hand, that boar bristle brush. Let me explain the science because this is genuinely fascinating. Your scalp produces sebum. That's the natural oil that keeps your hair healthy. Modern shampoo strips all that oil away, which is why we need conditioner to put moisture back in. But Victorian women worked with their body's natural system instead of against it. The boar bristle brush, with its natural keratin bristles, the same protein that makes up human hair, distributes that sebum from the scalp all the way down to the ends of the hair shaft. Mary begins brushing now. Starting at the roots, she presses the bristles against Eleanor's scalp and pulls the brush all the way down to the ends in one smooth, firm stroke. 1. The brush lifts away. 2. Another stroke, starting again at the scalp. 3, 4, 5. Each stroke serves multiple purposes. First, it's cleaning the hair, removing the dirt and dust that's accumulated throughout the day. Remember, this is 1875 and London's air is thick with coal smoke and street dust. Second, it's distributing those natural oils. And third, and this is the part Victorian women really understood, it's stimulating blood circulation to the scalp. There's a beauty manual from 1910 that explains it like this. The hair should be given a 5 minutes brushing night and morning. Each stroke must begin on the scalp so the tips of the bristles are felt. 5 minutes might not sound like much, but when you're doing it properly with firm pressure and deliberate strokes, 5 minutes is actually quite a long time. Try it sometime. Brush your hair continuously for 5 minutes and see how your arm feels. But Victorian women didn't stop at 5 minutes. 20 strokes was considered the absolute minimum for a proper evening treatment. Most beauty guides recommended at least 100 strokes. And some women, the ones who were really serious about their hair, would brush for a full 20 minutes, which could mean 200 strokes or more. Now you might be thinking, wasn't there a practical reason for all this brushing? And you'd be absolutely right. Because here's the part of Victorian life that most history books politely skip over. Head lice, let's be honest about this. In an era when people bathed once a week at most, when multiple family members might share the same bed, when children attended crowded schools, and when medical understanding of hygiene was still developing, head lice were incredibly common. Not just among the poor, among everyone. And you know what's really effective at removing lice eggs from hair? 100 strokes with a stiff brush. There's a historian named Victoria Sharrow who wrote in the Encyclopedia of Hair that some researchers believe the 100 strokes tradition might have originated specifically for this purpose. Not to make hair shiny and beautiful, although that was a nice bonus, but to literally brush the lice nits out of the hair before they could hatch. Can you imagine all those Victorian ladies sitting at their dressing tables brushing and brushing and brushing, and the whole time it's actually a form of parasite control? They probably didn't talk about it in polite company, but they absolutely knew what they were doing. 15 strokes, 20, 30. Mary's arm is getting a workout now, but she keeps going. Alina's hair is starting to shine in the candlelight, taking on that silky, feathery quality you see in Victorian photographs. Because here's another secret. When you brush natural oils through hair this way, it behaves differently. It becomes sleeker, more manageable. Those elaborate Victorian hairstyles that look impossible to create with unstyled hair, they're actually easier when the hair has this natural texture. But not everyone had a Mary. Let me tell you about the other women, the ones who had to do this themselves. There's a letter from 1890 written by a young woman named Alice who worked as a governess. She writes to her friend, "I am so exhausted each evening that I can barely manage 20 strokes before my arm gives out. I know I should do more, but I simply haven't the strength. My hair suffers for it, I'm afraid, and looks quite dull compared to my employer's daughters who have their maid brush for a full quarter-hour each night." Think about what that letter reveals. The class difference isn't just about money, it's about labor. It's about having someone else's energy available to you. Alina can sit relaxed while Mary does the work. But Alice has to choose between proper hair care and getting enough sleep before her next 14-hour workday. 50 strokes now. Mary changes her technique slightly, brushing the hair upward from underneath to ventilate the scalp. This was specifically recommended in beauty manuals. An 1891 guide explains, the hair should be brushed not only flat to the head, but putting the brush underneath and drawing the hair loose and free so that all parts are ventilated. They understood that the scalp needed to breathe, needed air circulation. These weren't just arbitrary beauty rituals. There was real practical wisdom embedded in them. 70 strokes, 80. Alina's eyes are half closed now. There's something almost meditative about this process, isn't it? The rhythmic stroke of the brush, the gentle pull on the scalp, the quiet of the room, broken only by the soft bristle sounds and the occasional crackle from the fireplace. This is something we have lost in our modern efficiency. We brush our hair quickly in the morning, maybe 30 seconds with a plastic brush while we're thinking about our schedule for the day. But Victorian women had this built-in meditation practice, this forced slowdown. This time when they had to just be still. Of course, some women took this ritual to extremes. There are accounts of women who believed that brushing increased hair growth, so they'd brush for 30 minutes or more, sometimes twice a day, and there's actually some truth to this. Modern research has shown that scalp massage does increase blood flow to the hair follicles, and increased blood flow can promote healthier, faster-growing hair. The Victorians didn't know the mechanism, but they'd observed the results. 90 strokes, 95, 100. Mary finishes with a few gentle strokes from root to tip, smoothing everything into place. Alina's hair gleams now, rippling like silk when she turns her head. But we're not quite done yet because now comes the braiding. This is crucial. You don't just leave long hair loose while you sleep. That's asking for tangles and breakage. Mary gathers Alina's hair and divides it into 3 sections. A simple braid, nothing fancy, just practical. She braids it loosely. Tight braiding would cause those same painful indentations that the day's hairstyle created. At the end, she ties it with a soft ribbon. No pins, no clips, nothing that will dig into Alina's head while she sleeps. An 1810 beauty manual explains it this way. I believe it is impossible for a woman who does not brush and braid her tresses every night to have as luxuriant locks as one who regards this routine. The wisdom here is actually sound. Protecting the hair while sleeping prevents breakage. Keeping it brushed prevents matting and distributes natural oils. It's simple but effective, but here's something that might surprise you. Not every Victorian woman braided her hair for bed. Some wore sleep caps, basically little bonnets designed to protect the hair and keep it neat. These were made of soft cotton or silk, and some were even scented. You could buy special caps that have been infused with lavender or rose oil, so your hair would take on that scent overnight. One beauty guide from 1910 describes the process. The hair should be thoroughly brushed and combed at night and then done in a loose braid. The more every hair is exposed to the cap, the more it will take the sweet odor. It is worn all night. Can you imagine your hair smelling like roses every morning without any spray or perfume, just from sleeping in a scented cap? Now I want to tell you about one more aspect of this hair ritual because it connects to something we talked about earlier. Remember how I mentioned that some women had to make terrible choices because of exhaustion? Let me share a darker side of the 100 strokes tradition. There was a growing movement in the late Victorian era of physicians and dress reformers who worried about women's health. And one of the things they noticed was that young girls and women were developing repetitive strain injuries in their arms and shoulders from excessive hairbrushing. There are medical journals from the 1890s warning against overbrushing and recommending that women limit themselves to just 5 minutes of brushing instead of the traditional 20. But here's the irony. The same society that was injuring women with impossible beauty standards was also the society that valued those standards above health. So even when physicians warned against overbrushing, beauty magazines continued to insist on the 100 strokes. Fashion won over wellness, as it so often does. Let me bring this back to Alina's room because Mary has just finished the braid and is now applying one final touch. She takes a small bottle from the dressing table, it's labeled hair tonic, and applies just a few drops to Alina's scalp, massaging it in with her fingertips. These tonics were usually made with ingredients like rosemary oil or bay rum or even quinine. They were supposed to prevent hair loss and promote growth. Did they work? Probably about as well as the hair growth serums we buy today, which is to say marginally if you're lucky. But here's what I find touching about this moment. The care, the gentleness, Mary's fingers working the tonic into Alina's scalp in small circular motions. This is intimacy. This is trust. Alina has allowed Mary to see her with her hair down, to touch her head, to care for her in this vulnerable state. In a society that was so rigid, so formal, so obsessed with propriety, these small moments of genuine human connection must have been precious. And what about the women who didn't have a Mary? Well, they developed their own rituals. Some brushed their own hair while sitting at the edge of the bed using a technique where they bent forward from the waist so their hair hung down in front of them. This allowed gravity to help distribute the oils and also gave a nice scalp massage. It was harder work doing it yourself, but it was possible. There's a lovely detail in an 1870 beauty manual that recommends this technique specifically. For a stimulating scalp massage, bend forward from the waist so your hair hangs in front of your face and brush upside down. Can you picture it? A woman in her nightgown bent over brushing her hair in long strokes from the nape of her neck to the ends, the blood rushing to her head, the candlelight making shadows dance on the walls. These women, whether they had help or did it themselves, understood something important. They understood that taking care of your body isn't frivolous, it's not vain, it's necessary. Yes, there were aspects of Victorian beauty culture that were oppressive and damaging. We've talked about the tight lacing, the toxic makeup ingredients we'll explore later. But this, the hairbrushing, this was actually healthy. This was self-care before we had a term for it. Modern science backs this up. By the way, scalp massage has been shown to reduce stress, improve sleep quality, and yes, even promote hair growth by increasing blood flow to the follicles. The Victorians didn't have peer-reviewed studies, but they'd figured it out through generations of observation. As Mary helps Alina into the bed, fluffing the feather pillows and pulling the wool blankets up, I want you to notice something. Alina's hair is braided, her body is clean. Her skin has been tended to, she's done everything she's supposed to do, she's performed the rituals that society expects of her. And yet, and this is important, these rituals have also given her something. They've given her 20 minutes of quiet, 20 minutes of someone caring for her. 20 minutes when she didn't have to think about anything except the feel of the brush moving through her hair. Was it worth it? That's for each woman to decide. Some found it meditative and restorative, others found it tedious and time-consuming. Both things can be true. What I know is this. When we look at old photographs of Victorian women with their impossibly long, lustrous hair, we're looking at the result of this nightly ritual. Every single strand of that hair had been brushed at least 700 times per week, minimum. That's not genetics, although that certainly played a role. That's labor, that's time, that's care. Repeated so consistently that it becomes part of your body's very structure. And now, as Alina's eyes grow heavy and the candle burns lower, another ritual awaits. Because Victorian women didn't just tend to their hair and body at night. They tended to their skin with concoctions that ranged from brilliantly effective to downright deadly. Cold cream and cucumber water, yes, but also arsenic and mercury. In the next part of our journey, we are going to explore the Victorian medicine cabinet. And I promise you, some of what we'll find there will shock you, but we'll also find wisdom. We'll find recipes that modern skincare companies have essentially copied. We'll find women being scientists in their own bedchambers, mixing ingredients and observing results, creating beauty products that actually worked, even if they didn't always understand why. So stay with me as we move from the dressing table to the washstand, from hairbrush to cold cream jar, from one kind of care to another, because the night is still young. And Victorian women still have hours of rituals ahead of them before they finally close their eyes. The washstand in the corner of Alina's room holds secrets. Small jars with handwritten labels, bottles of mysterious liquids, a porcelain bowl and pitcher. And if we could peek inside those jars, if we could read those faded labels and analyze what's actually in there, we'd find a mixture of brilliance and madness. Some of these concoctions are so effective that modern skincare companies have essentially copied the formulas. Others contain ingredients that would literally kill you. Welcome to the Victorian medicine cabinet, where rose water sits next to arsenic, where cucumber juice shares shelf space with mercury, where women were chemists, experimenters, and sometimes quite unintentionally poisoners of their own skin. Let me start with the good stuff because I want you to understand something important. Victorian women weren't stupid. They were observant. They were resourceful. And they understood their skin in ways that might actually surprise us. Before there were dermatologists and cosmetic chemists, there were women in their bedchambers mixing ingredients, testing them, sharing recipes with friends, passing knowledge from mother to daughter. Mary has just brought a small jar to Alina's bedside. The label written in elegant script reads cold cream, and this right here is one of Victorian skincare's greatest hits, cold cream. The name itself is interesting, isn't it? It's called cold cream because it feels cool on the skin when you apply it. The basic formula hasn't changed much in over 100 years. Beeswax, almond oil, rose water, and an emulsifier, that's it. Simple, natural, and genuinely effective. Victorian women used cold cream for everything, as a moisturizer, as a makeup remover. Though remember, respectable women weren't supposed to wear makeup, so they'd never admit to needing a makeup remover, as a hand cream, as a protective barrier before going outside. There's a beauty manual from 1901 that describes the proper nighttime application. The face should be washed with water but once a day. Smear cold cream on the face. Wash off the cream with Castile soap, then dip a piece of soft cloth in hot water and hold it to the face. Afterwards, pat the face dry with soft fabric and apply good face cream again. Let me walk you through what Alina is doing right now because this 5-step process is actually fascinating. First, Mary helps her apply the cold cream liberally to her face, her neck, her hands, anywhere the skin has been exposed to the day's air and dirt. And remember, this is 1875 in London. The air isn't just dirty, it's thick with coal smoke. Every surface in the city gets a fine coating of soot by the end of the day, and that includes Alina's skin. The cold cream sits on her skin for a moment, and here's the clever part. The oils in the cream are dissolving the oils on her skin like dissolves, like all the grime, the dust, the remnants of the day. It's all binding with the cream. Then Mary uses small squares of soft cotton, never reused, always fresh, to wipe the cream away. Each cotton square turns gray with the dirt it's removed. Can you imagine never having seen what comes off your face until you try this? Women who first discovered this technique must have been horrified and delighted in equal measure. Now comes the soap, but not just any soap, because Castile soap, which is much gentler than regular soap. It's made from olive oil and it's been used since medieval times. Mary works up a light lather and applies it sparingly to Alina's face, just enough to remove the residue of the cold cream. Too much soap would strip the skin completely, leaving it dry and irritated. Then, and this is the part that feels luxurious even to describe, Mary dips a clean cloth in hot water and presses it to Alina's face. The heat opens the pores, the steam soothes the skin. It's like a mini facial right there in the bedroom. In the 1800s, before we had hot running water in every bathroom, this was a little moment of indulgence. That hot water had to be carried upstairs by a servant. It had to be heated on the stove. It represented labor, warmth, care. Alina pats her face dry with a soft towel. And then, final step, Mary applies another thin layer of cold cream. This time it's not for cleaning, it's for protection. It's going to sit on Alina's skin all night, moisturizing, healing, keeping her complexion soft. She'll sleep with a towel over her pillow to protect the linens, and in the morning her skin will be noticeably softer. This ritual works. Modern science has confirmed what Victorian women knew instinctively, that the skin's barrier function is important, that moisture helps healing, that gentle cleansing is better than harsh scrubbing. The oil cleansing method that's trendy in Korean beauty routines right now. Victorian women were doing it 150 years ago, but here's where the story takes a darker turn. Because not every woman had access to simple, safe, cold cream recipes, and not every woman was satisfied with her natural complexion, let me tell you about the Victorian obsession with pale skin. This wasn't just a preference, it was practically a religion. Pale skin meant you didn't work outside. It meant you were refined, delicate, upper class. Tan skin was for peasants and field workers, and women would go to absolutely terrifying lengths to achieve that porcelain paleness. Alina is fortunate. Her skin is naturally fair, and she protects it with parasols and wide-brimmed hats when she goes outside. But there's another jar on her washstand, one she doesn't use very often, but that many of her friends swear by. The label reads complexion wafers. Sounds innocent, doesn't it? Like a little cosmetic treat, these wafers, thin sheets of paper soaked in arsenic. Yes, arsenic, the poison. Women would apply these arsenic-laced wafers to their faces to make their skin paler. Some would even eat small amounts of arsenic, believing it would make them look more ethereal, more delicate. And it worked in a horrifying way. Arsenic poisoning does make you pale. It also causes your hair to thin, your skin to become translucent, your eyes to develop dark circles. Victorian beauty standards essentially celebrated the early symptoms of poisoning. There's a medical case from 1878 documented in the Lancet Medical Journal about a young woman who died from arsenic poisoning. The physician who treated her noted that she'd been using arsenic cosmetics for 3 years. 3 years, and she'd probably started using them because all her friends were doing the same thing. But wait, it gets worse. Arsenic wasn't the only poison in the Victorian beauty arsenal. There was also mercury. Mercury was used in skin lightening creams. The logic was that mercury could remove freckles and dark spots, and it did remove them by literally destroying the melanin-producing cells in your skin. It also caused mercury poisoning, which led to neurological damage, kidney failure, and death. But hey, at least your skin was pale, right? I need you to understand how common this was. This wasn't a fringe practice done by a few extreme individuals. This was mainstream. There are advertisements from the 1880s in respectable women's magazines selling arsenic complexion wafers and mercury-based skin creams. They marketed right next to ads for piano lessons and household management books. The tragedy is that women knew these products were dangerous. The medical journals were publishing warnings. Physicians were speaking out publicly, but the social pressure to conform to beauty standards was so intense that women used them anyway. There's a letter from 1885 where a young woman writes to her sister. I know Mama would be horrified if she knew I was using the wafers, but everyone at school has such lovely pale skin and mine looks so ruddy by comparison. I only use them twice a week. Surely that cannot be too harmful. Surely, but it was. Let me show you another product from Alina's washstand because not everything was deadly. Some Victorian beauty treatments were actually inspired. There's a small bottle labeled cucumber milk. This is a preparation made from fresh cucumber juice mixed with alcohol and distilled. Cucumbers contain natural acids and vitamins that are genuinely good for skin. Modern skincare products use cucumber extract for its anti-inflammatory and soothing properties. Victorian women figured this out just by observation and experimentation. Here's how they made it. According to an 1890 beauty manual, press the juice from cucumbers, mix with an equal volume of alcohol, and distill. If the distillate is not sufficiently perfumed, more juice may be added and the mixture distilled. They were essentially creating a toner, a natural, effective, safe toner, no arsenic required. Or consider this recipe, which I find absolutely charming. While cucumbers are plentiful, keep thick slices of the softest on the washstand and use them after soap to rub face, hands, and throat, rinsing afterward. Can you picture it? Just rubbing a slice of cucumber on your face like the world's simplest face mask, and it works. Cucumber is cooling, hydrating, and mildly astringent. Victorian women also made face masks from ingredients we'd recognize today. Mashed strawberries for brightening, honey for antibacterial properties and moisture, egg whites for tightening, oatmeal for gentle exfoliation. These recipes have survived because they're effective. Your great-great-grandmother might have used the same honey mask that you can buy at a luxury spa today for $50. But, and this is important, these natural remedies existed side by side with the dangerous ones. The same magazine that published the cucumber toner recipe would also advertise arsenic wafers. The same woman who made honey masks might also use lead-based face powder. Lead, I haven't even gotten to the lead yet. Face powder in the Victorian era was often made with white lead. The same stuff used in house paint. Women would dust it all over their faces, their necks, their shoulders. It gave an absolutely flawless matte finish. It also caused lead poisoning, which resulted in brain damage, paralysis, and death. There's a medical report from 1892 about a wealthy woman who'd used lead powder daily for 15 years. By the time physicians figured out what was wrong with her, the neurological damage was permanent. The cruelest irony, lead powder was marketed as being healthier than arsenic wafers. The advertisements would say things like, "Safe and pure, contains no harmful arsenic," as if lead were somehow the responsible choice. Now you might be wondering, didn't anyone tell them to stop? Didn't physicians, scientists, anyone with sense try to warn women about these products? Yes, constantly. There are anti-cosmetics treatises dating back to the 1600s warning about the dangers of toxic beauty products. The Victorian era saw an explosion of medical literature documenting case after case of poisoning from cosmetics. Physicians went on lecture tour warning women about the dangers. But here's the thing, and this is going to sound familiar to anyone who's ever struggled with societal pressure. Knowing something is bad for you and stopping doing it are two very different things. Victorian women were trapped in a terrible feedback loop. The beauty standard demanded pale skin. The safest way to achieve pale skin was to stay out of the sun completely, which was only possible if you were wealthy enough not to work. But if you had to work, or if you just naturally had darker skin, or if you had freckles which were considered deeply unattractive, then you turned to products. And the products that worked fastest were the most dangerous ones. There's a heartbreaking quote from a beauty advice column in an 1888 magazine. A reader writes in, "I am engaged to be married, and my fiancé has remarked several times on the loveliness of his friend's wife, whose complexion is like porcelain. My own skin is marred by freckles, which I have tried everything to remove. Am I wrong to use products that may be harmful if they help me keep my husband's affection?" The columnist's response, "A wife's duty is to remain attractive to her husband. However, we recommend trying lemon juice and horseradish first, as these natural remedies may suffice." Lemon juice and horseradish for freckles, which by the way don't work to remove freckles. But at least they won't kill you. Let me tell you about one more product before we move on, because this one is particularly insidious. Belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade. Victorian women would put drops of belladonna extract in their eyes to dilate their pupils. Huge dark pupils were considered alluring and mysterious. And belladonna does dilate your pupils beautifully. It also causes blurred vision, light sensitivity, and with repeated use permanent eye damage and even blindness. There are medical case reports of women who used belladonna eye drops so frequently that they could no longer see clearly in daylight. They had to wear dark veils whenever they went outside. And some of them kept using the drops anyway because the aesthetic effect, those enormous luminous eyes, was considered worth the price. Worth the price. Let that sink in. Victorian women were choosing beauty over sight. But let's return to Eleanor because I don't want to give you the impression that every Victorian woman was poisoning herself. Most women, particularly those who were educated and had access to good information, stuck to the safer remedies. Eleanor's washstand contains mostly harmless things: rose water, glycerin, almond oil, beeswax-based creams. Mary is now applying a light facial massage using just her fingertips and a small amount of cold cream. This was recommended in every beauty manual of the era. The massage stimulates circulation, helps the cream penetrate, and prevents wrinkles. An 1891 guide explains, for the wrinkles across the forehead, move the fingers always in one direction and up towards the roots of the hair. For the mouth wrinkles, begin at the chin and smooth in a semicircular movement towards the ears. This is lymphatic drainage massage. We're rediscovering it now as some kind of revolutionary skincare technique, but Victorian women were doing it every night. The techniques they used are almost identical to what you'd receive at a modern spa, except Mary learned them from her mother, who learned them from her mother, going back generations. 3 minutes of gentle massage. Eleanor's eyes are closed. The cold cream smells faintly of roses and almonds. The fire crackles softly. For a moment, all the toxicity and danger of Victorian beauty culture falls away, and it's just this: one woman's hands caring for another woman's face. Gentle, ritualistic, kind. And then Mary rinses Eleanor's face one final time with cool water. Applying cold water after the massage was believed to close the pores and firm the skin, which is actually not how pores work. But the cool water does feel refreshing and does reduce any inflammation from the massage. Eleanor's face is glowing now, not from arsenic or lead or mercury, just from cleanliness, moisture, and good circulation. She looks like herself, but softer, more relaxed. The tension of the day has been literally massaged away. This is the paradox of Victorian skincare. It gave us some genuinely brilliant techniques: oil cleansing, facial massage, the use of natural ingredients. It also gave us some of the most dangerous beauty practices in history. The same culture that valued natural beauty enough to develop these gentle, effective treatments also created such intense pressure to conform that women would risk death for pale skin and dark eyes. As Eleanor settles into her bed now, her skin clean and moisturized, I want you to think about something. We look back at Victorian women and think, how could they be so foolish? How could they not see that they were poisoning themselves? But are we really so different? We inject botulinum toxin, literally one of the most deadly substances known to science, into our faces to prevent wrinkles. We undergo surgery to change our features. We use products that haven't been tested long enough to know the long-term effects. The specific poisons have changed, but the pressure hasn't. The willingness to risk harm for beauty hasn't. We've just gotten better at justifying it, but we've also kept some of the good things. That cold cream recipe, you can still buy versions of it today. That cucumber toner, it's in half the skincare products at any drugstore. Those facial massage techniques, they're taught in every aesthetic school. Victorian women weren't all victims of their era's toxicity. Some of them were innovators, experimenters, and pioneers of natural skincare. The question is, which parts of their legacy do we want to keep? The wisdom or the poison, the self-care or the self-destruction? Eleanor doesn't have to answer that question tonight. She's already made her choices, the safe ones, the gentle ones, but lying just a few streets away are hundreds of other women making different choices. Some are applying arsenic wafers right now. Some are about to drop belladonna in their eyes. Some are sleeping in masks made of lead paste, believing it will give them the perfect complexion. And in the morning, some of them will wake up with skin that's a little paler, eyes that are a little harder to focus, hands that shake just slightly more than they did yesterday. The price of beauty, they'll tell themselves. The price of being desirable, the price of fitting in. But tonight, Alina is safe, her skin is clean, her rituals are complete, almost complete, because there's one more aspect of Victorian nighttime routines that we haven't discussed yet. And it's perhaps the most intimate, most private, most carefully hidden part of all the necessities that no one talked about in polite society, but that every woman had to manage every single night. I'm talking about the chamber pot, the wash basin. The private acts of bodily function that Victorian propriety demanded be invisible, but that clever Victorian design actually made surprisingly manageable, even while wearing 11 lb of undergarments. And when we explore that next, you're going to learn some things about Victorian underwear that will change how you think about the entire era. Stay with me. We're about to get very real about very private matters, and I promise you, it's going to be fascinating. There's a piece of furniture hiding under Alina's bed that no Victorian would ever mention in polite conversation. Yet every single household possessed at least one, usually several, some plain and utilitarian, others decorated with delicate floral patterns. As if prettying them up could make their function disappear. I'm talking, of course, about the chamber pot, and before you think this is going to be crude or inappropriate, let me tell you something. The Victorian approach to bathroom necessities at night reveals some genuinely brilliant design thinking, because here's the challenge they faced. How do you handle basic human needs when you're wearing multiple layers of complicated clothing? When the nearest water closet might be 2 floors down when it's dark and cold, and when undressing completely would take 20 minutes. The answer is actually ingenious, and it's going to change how you think about Victorian underwear forever. Let me take you back to Alina's bedroom one more time. It's now around 10:30 in the evening. She's been in bed for perhaps 15 minutes reading by candlelight and nature calls. This is a moment that happens to every human being every single night. Yet you'll search Victorian literature in vain for any mention of it. It simply wasn't discussed, but absolutely happened. Under the bed, there's a chamber pot. In wealthier households, this would be porcelain, often quite beautiful, with the matching lid. In working-class homes, it might be simple pottery or even tin. But every bedroom had one, because the alternative, going outside to an outhouse in your nightgown in the middle of winter, was unthinkable. Now, here's where Victorian design gets clever. Remember those drawers we talked about earlier, the ones that were essentially 2 separate legs joined only at the waistband? I told